Today I decided to give you guys a ranking of the Rocky franchise. This is actually an updated ranking because I did rank these films at one point, but two new films have been released since my last video, so I figured why not give you guys a more updated version of that video. Without further ado, let's get started. Coming in at number 10 is Rocky V. Released in 1990, this at the time was the end of the Rocky franchise, and was the last Rocky film in the series for 16 whole years before we got Rocky Balboa. This film is kind of a misstep, and that's the best way to describe it. It essentially sees Rocky training a new fighter named Tommy Gunn, played by Tommy Morrison, also trying to reconcile his relationship with his family and his son after he loses his money due to a bad real estate scam from his lawyer. I don't know, it's kind of a wonky plot. It's just kind of an excuse for Rocky to lose his money. All in all, an entertaining entry that I do enjoy. I think it's a bad entry into this franchise. However, Rocky V is kind of a misstep and one that's not super memorable. But I do have a soft spot for it, and I don't think it's a bad movie. Just one that's kind of misguided, I would say. Coming in at number 9 is 2022's Creed 3. I don't actually own the physical release of this yet, but I have watched it on streamer. I'll buy it at some point just to complete the collection, but for now I'll just hold up the first film. I actually did not mind Creed 3, and I thought it was actually a decent follow-up, but it kind of felt a bit misguided. This film shows Adonis going up against a former friend of his, a battle to prove that he still got it, and more or less put his friend in his place. His friend's kind of not a good person. All in all, it's not a bad entry, but I find it to be a little bit misguided, and it's definitely the worst of the Creed movies. It was okay, but the threat is not really there. The villain of the film, played by Lee Majors, is not really as intimidating as Victor Drago from Creed 2, but it is a decent follow-up, and one that I probably will watch again, just nothing really that special. Coming in at number 8 is Creed 1, basically showing the story of Apollo Creed's illegitimate kid, who gets trained by Rocky and tries to become a boxing champ like his father. A good continuation, just kind of standard. And while I really like this one, it's kind of one note. It's kind of been there, done that. And I think the sequel to this is much better. I do like the film, but just not one of the most memorable of the franchise. Coming in at number 7 is Rocky Balboa. This film sees Rocky coming out of retirement to fight one final bout against Mason the Lion Dixon, played by Antonio Tarver. Not a bad film, kind of a rehash of the original, and I think that's probably the biggest flaw with the Rocky series. None of the films I consider bad, but there is kind of a formula that they all follow, and this one's no different. I actually do enjoy this film, and it's a nice send-off to the character, and though it is a bit basic, it's kind of the answer to Rocky V that we needed, a good return to form, and a fun final entry into the main Rocky saga. Coming in at number 6 is Rocky IV. I really do love this crazy 80s film. Still kind of a weird poster, though. Yeah. This film basically sees Rocky going up against the powerhouse Ivan Drago after, spoiler alert, Apollo Creed is killed in the ring fighting Ivan. Rocky must travel to Russia to fight the giant and prove that he still is a champion. A fun and entertaining film. The film's only 90 minutes, and about 30 of those minutes is music montages. It's a crazy, fun 80s film, but a little bit basic, but still very entertaining. Coming in at number 5 is Creed 2. This one's actually gone down a little bit since my last ranking, but I really do love Creed 2, and I think it's the epitome of that trilogy. Possibly soon to be 4 films, but this film is great. It basically shows Creed going up against Ivan Drago's son in an attempt to avenge his father's name after the death of his father in Rocky IV. This is everything I wanted Creed 1 to be. The continuation of the Apollo Creed legacy and him getting redemption for his father's death. And that makes for a great story. The villain this time around, Victor Drago, is much more intimidating than the villain from Creed 1 and Creed 3. And this is an amazing continuation and one that I really, really love. This was an impressive film that really proved that the Creed franchise is very entertaining and right up there with the likes of the Rocky franchise. Check this movie out, the best of the trilogy. very awesome. Again, at number 4 is Rocky 3. This film sees Rocky go up against Clubber Lang, a new up-and-coming contender. He must fight Clubber after a loss against him. He must fight him again in a rematch to try to win back his title after the death of Mickey. This is a really fun and awesome entry, and I think it's a bit underrated. I think a lot of people don't give this one quite the credit it deserves, but it kind of feels like the ending of the Rocky trilogy. I know there are more films after this, but honestly, I just love this, and it does feel like something of an end to those first 3 films. I really do think this one has a great soundtrack, great direction by Stallone, good acting all around. It's just a fun entry, and definitely the most 80s Rocky movie. Check it out. Coming in at number 3 was a bit of a surprise to me, but this movie actually ended up blowing me away, and that is Rocky IV, Rocky vs. Drago, the Ultimate Director's Cut. Kind of a mouthful of a title. But essentially what this film is, it was actually released rather recently, it was just about a year and a half ago. Stallone basically released a director's cut of Rocky IV. This film puts back in footage that was cut from the original film, redoes sequences that were a little bit too campy, cuts out the robot, makes the film much more serious and flows better. There's even new music tracks, better shots that are used of the original, enhanced footage, and it's presented in beautiful 4K. This is just an amazing, and I repeat, amazing director's cut that pretty much blows the original out the water. It is such a great film, and I loved seeing this on the big screen. It was awesome seeing basically a new Rocky movie starring Stallone on the big screen that wasn't a Creed film. It's very entertaining, and if you're a fan of Rocky IV, you will probably love this director's cut. And if you're not a fan of Rocky IV, you still might like this director's cut because it fixes most of the problems of that original film. Definitely the definitive version of Rocky IV, and one that I highly recommend. Coming in at number 2, though, is Rocky II. Released in 1979, this film shows Rocky going up against Apollo Creed again in a rematch for the heavyweight title. It also shows Rocky getting married, having a kid, buying his first house. It's just basically, a great continuation of the first film. And one of the reasons why I love it so much, it kind of just feels like the first film. I've always said that Rocky II just feels like Rocky 1.5. It's like Rocky, but the next day. And I always love that about the movie. It's just more of what I love about the first film, just slightly ahead in the timeline. And not a lot of sequels do that, and I think this one does it magnificently. If you love the first film, get ready for more of the same, and that's not a bad thing here, because Rocky 1 is amazing. This is basically Rocky 1, but just more. But you can't beat the seminal classic, 1976's Best Picture winner, Rocky. This film is amazing. It was basically the film that put Stallone on the map. It shows an underdog named Rocky Balboa going up against the heavyweight champion of the world, Apollo Creed, and falling in love with the girl of his dreams, Adrian. A great film through and through. One of the best films ever made, and I think probably one of my favorite films ever. I'd probably put this film in my top 5, and maybe even my top 3. If you haven't seen Rocky, go out and watch it. You'll love it. Even if you don't give a crap about boxing, you will love this movie. It's a great romance movie and a great sports drama, and there's just no beating the classic, Rocky. Well, that's my list. As you can see, I'm a big fan of this franchise, owning the VHSs, some of the DVDs, the 4Ks, and even the Blu-rays. This is a series that I've always enjoyed, and there's not one bad entry in the series. There's even some amazing video games, Rocky Legends, the Balboa game, and hell, even Creed Champions. There's just no shortage of fun when it comes to this franchise. There are more complex series out there. The Rocky series is a bit one note. You know what you're going to get every time, but it's always good every single time. And I have always loved these movies. Stallone is the man. This is the best series of films that he's had to offer in his entire career. And that's not a bad thing. That's awesome. These movies are great. I recommend all of them to anyone who's a fan of good cinema. I thank you all for watching my video, and peace out.